Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Dia's Readings in Contemporary Poetry series. My name is Megan Whitco, and I'm one of our curatorial associates here, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Dia tonight, to our very first reading of the series, our first reading for 2015. So the Readings in Contemporary Poetry series was something that we reinstated in 2011, in partnership with the series curator, Vincent Katz. And the monthly readings highlight commonalities amongst poets and really bring their work into a larger conversation with one another. So I really want to extend a very warm welcome to our two poets for the evening, Basil King and Gregoire Pam Dick. Thank you both for generously accepting our offer and being a part of the series. It's great to have you here tonight. Good way to start off February. So thank you as well to the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs. It's their generous support that helps make these evenings at Dia possible. And we also want to give a special thank you to Brooklyn Brewery for the complimentary cold beverage, and also to our staff, particularly Blair, Claire, Kat, and Max, for helping with producing tonight's program. So just sort of a brief schedule of events. After our first reader, we take a quick 10-minute intermission, and then we resume with the second speaker of the evening. So it's now my pleasure to welcome Vincent Katz, who's going to give the first introduction for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you all for coming out on a frosty night. It's great to be starting our year again in Readings in Contemporary Poetry with this terrific reading tonight. And we have some great ones coming up as well next week, in fact, which is sooner than our usual rhythm allows. Bill Berkson will be reading with Matt Longobucco. And then March 10th, we've got Clark Coolidge coming in, and he'll be reading with Edmund Berrigan. April 14th will be Peter Gizzi and the poems of Frank-Andre Jam, translated by Norma Cole, who will be reading the translations. And then finally, our last reading will be on May 12th, and that will be Joanne Kiger and Stephen Motika. But we've got a long way to go to get to May. And tonight we're here with Gregoire Pam Dick and Basil King. Gregoire Pam Dick, a.k.a. Mina Pam Dick, Jake Pam Dick et al., a.k.a. Hildebrand Pam Dick, Nico Pam Dick et al., is a writer, artist, and philosopher living in New York City. She's a native New Yorker. She received a BA from Yale and an MFA in painting, as well as an MA in philosophy from the University of Minnesota. Her writing has appeared in Aufgabe, Baum, The Brooklyn Rail, and her philosophical work has appeared in a collection published by the International Wittgenstein Symposium. Dick is the author of Metaphysical Licks from Book Thug 2014 and Delinquent from Future Poem in 2009. Gregoire Pam Dick is a shapeshifter. With her evolving cast of shady characters, she has carved out a space in contemporary writing where none was before. The usual reference points, even those suggested by her own predilections, are not useful or misleading, unless being misled might be considered useful in itself. Instead of being all those things, Dick's writing is none of them. Significantly, it subverts the usual strictures of prose, while drinking wholeheartedly from the font of poetry. The proof is in the sound, and it is in there, that mess of all the above, that her voice, against even its own intentions perhaps, emerges. Pay attention to the ludic quality in this passage, how accurate it is as criticism, and yet how it touches on names without becoming referential. It ends up being its own commentary on itself. And this is a quote. No future is punk, no wave is past, the no's important. The idea of the continual yes is a vapid idea. Yes dies into no. No revives as yes. Like chance contortions, Mars bars of music, teenage Jesus and the jerking off, our DNA, no yes New York, how they come back, if you let them. Please help me welcome Gregoire Pam Dick to DIA.
Thank you, Vincent. Wow, that's, I think, the best intro I've ever had, so that's great. Thank you so much for inviting me to read with Basil King. I'm very excited to hear him, and thank you all for coming. I'm going to read some excerpts from my very new book, Metaphysical Licks, which is the one that's authored by Gregoire Pam Dick, and just a little bit of background about that. So this book engages with the work and lives of the early 20th century Austrian expressionist poet Georg Trakl and his sister Greta, who was a composer and musician. They were very close. They had difficult lives. They both died young. They were very creative and very intense, and all of that sort of factors into the book. So in my book, there's a Greta based on the historical Greta, and then there's a New York present-day version. And that second Greta has various other brothers in addition to Georg. One of them is a version of Wittgenstein, one of them is a version of Kafka, and that Greta is also betrothed to Nietzsche. So a version of Nietzsche. So you might hear a little bit of that. And the book, it has various forms in it. One of the forms is this recurring philosophical notebooks. There's a libretto I'll read a little bit of that's riffs on Tristan and Isolde, crossed with Georg Trakl's imagery. And then the book ends with a graphic score, supposedly done by Greta, which is just a sequence of drawings of mine, abstract drawings. So. Light gray, faintly blue notebook. Greta played the piano. I don't know if Greta does. How I wish that she would play it. Greta hits notes that are philosophy. The desire to uphold or deny reference rests on a confusion. The reference is the set of all senses, modes of presentation, denotation. The inferences are also senses, but are modes of implication, intimation, connotation. Denotation and connotation, both made of notes. Formally, the first person rules over everything, but it is invaded by other views, i.e. voices. There is an I, but is it free? What is freedom? Is it immature to ask that? The first person singular includes subjectivity, but also objectivity. The transcendental biject, or iject. They said Greta is bisexual. My brother tried to remove his I, therefore to be abstract, objective, but I said, dear brother, your I is still implicit. It need not be said. It shows itself. The truth is always first personal. He whispered, I do not wish to be a person. Greta stroked his long, wiry blonde hair or his cropped, wiry blonde hair, depending on the fourth dimensional context. When I go to Berlin, I will take my 5 brilliant brothers with me. I mean, they'll visit my mentality. Also, my one savvy sister-in-law, Lola, my brother Hakon's shameless wife. They are in my world, thus mine. They said, you are thrown into the world, it speaks to you. I retorted, the world is thrown out of me, I speak it. At the origin, the world and the I contract to one, a point, the mystical. Then is the transcendental I also the object, not only the subject, the world, not only the first person, so the world too is transcendental? The mystery of solipsism, my brother Ludwig couldn't solve it. The isolate paradox, the world I am thrown into is always already the world for me. The first person singular world, no escape from my experience. If I could only sit up straighter, my thoughts would be clearer. My training bra is cutting into my ribs like that crucifixion wound. Georg, I miss you. I am suddenly tired of playing with Lucrel, but Hakon was playing with Georg. Greta wondered what he was doing with him. She felt lonely as Gregor, who was missing. Should she seek out Victor? Thoughts of Victor, who could be like this or like that, different ways to be the brother. The day is halting stuttered. Greta drank liquids, light moved out of the way, didn't care. Their youth. Greta away at the school of the unangelic sisters in St. Pelt's, Georg flunking out of math and classical language, he a solo druggie, still drinks with the Spinnertes Grätzel, the crazy crew, she a solo prodigy, even by age 7, went home, sat on the swing in the garden, listened to Mademoiselle's stories, loved Rimbaud all by herself. At 14, she heard her bros' confidences. They swore hi-fi in stereo. 1 or 2, the childhood is learning to tell time. It is learning how hands move around and imagery is cyclical, but spirals down. Now, my now. Today I was going to be flat like my brother Gregoire, trapped in the room, revolting, the mother's face a bruise, father qua brotherly invalid, voluble victor dreaming up a future as a hotelier. But the budding willows stole me. Pale green tongues hanging out of childhood with Hispanic seeds, therefore hopeful nivalis. Things got new like girlish breast buds, or she thrust her dainty nipples out to avoid being heckled. Glorious, glorious, Connor's beard is trimmed, Reuben stays thicker. My crush on Reuben gets thinner as his beard gets thicker. It's okay, there's another boy to love. Half-awake thoughts of the blonde, his hedge, his hard prick, boy on tomboy swordplay. The universal was blonde. The guy coughed for great expectations, and I felt them. If the reality principle's thin, choose trans-reality, not irreality. Aria of sky and youth birch trees, or honeysuckle bushes, white and yellow. What is nature doing in this novel? Nature is the hovering city. A novelette, because the good is in a hurry, instantaneous perfection, momentary. When his sister fell ill, physics sang of string theory. Anton Webern's collected works for string, Greta Trockel's recollected works for high, strung out. She prefers the keyboard, which is strings also, only hidden, the universal vibration, oscillation ontology. Some lady said vibrato. But the word this is exploding. Uppers because melancholy wasn't pretty like Nick Drake, it was gruesome, horrid like Nick Drake. In high school I played air guitar. My best friend Layla watched. God played me his instrument, underlined the good with a pen. I got a discount because of his marginalia, juvenilia of my case, as if my papa finally saved me. Or the world, with all its possibilities. Rebel, rebel in the head, the Smiths in the ears, but now I didn't wish I was not here. Today not silent and gray, rather yellow and orchestral. Greta and Georg, or sister and brother, or Twilight of the Kids, the libretto. Acting out, Xena 1. Greta Tristel's bedroom in family castle / apartment. Greta, her Aunt Marlena in locked room. Georg outside door. Song of carpenters through window. We've only just begun to live. White lace and promises. Greta, whose LP taunts me. She strides to window at stage right, looks out across the way. 2 floors down, a young man in briefs does sit-ups. The music blares from his open window. Greta watches him for a moment, then turns around. Where am I? Marlena, you're in your room or on your blue rug. It's calm. By evening, you'll feel better. Greta, bitter. Marlena, don't speak that way. Greta leans out of window. Don't speak. Unspeakable X. Marlena rushing to her, pulling her in. What? Greta, degenerate line, unisex haircut, Geschlecht ist schlecht, it eats it, storm and cis, suicidal blood, wet dreams, self-spilled waking, shames each. Here I said, let's split, but together, now cowardly, not to go alone. Marlena, what? I don't get it, but I fear it, or I fear getting it, like leprosy. Then God falls off your face. But a unicursal maze is for simple tones, the master's plan. Greta, enough. Why can't you be Maria from The Sound of Music? We had dream sex once. Georg from other side of door. Greta, I hear your slim figure, let me in. Stony mother, drowning father, save my hair. Greta jumps back from door to herself. Stoned mother, swallowed father, plunging brother, falling sister, synopsis, sin, opposite. Is it all right to stop early after premature ejaculation? Zaina 5, after rapid breathing. Georg, darling, Greta, did you think my plan would change? Don't you know that I must leave you? Georg, you can't leave me. Greta, Marlena, leave us. Marlena nods conspiratorially, exits, waits outside. Greta, your lamed smile clouds my resolve, resounds in abandoned room. Sister, dark asylum, brother, decayed signage, longer eyes, press question mark, other key or star. Your machinery eludes me. Georg, night room with glowing plastic stick-on stars, damnation's strange decor, but your room flowers, silent petals, single word stem, stalk. Greta, petals flutter, eyelids seeking, blindness, not flirtations, father's voice belonging to a dead man who called for grayness, horror. Georg, the brother shall not look there. Greta, from fear of what? Georg, ask our babysitter. Greta, she left us alone. Anyway, you dissemble. Georg, disassembled. Desolate wood, floor of childhood lore, undiscerning. Sister, hasten closer. Greta, Blutschuld swings between us. Do you remember the swing on the weeping willow tree? Georg, blue shoulders, blue touch, hold, language, a foreign element, atonal. Greta, chords progress with tender fingerings, shiny yellow. Georg, do not say it, show it only. Play it slowly. Greta, shadows, stammering semantics, but no back pedal, shaved heads, sustained pedal, won't atone. Georg, sonata for masculine despair in G minor. Greta, pale brother fading in his chords, buried in his purple hair, or blue and black, übermenschlich. Georg, that would be you, a youth in metal, silver breastplate, Fald, Greaves, Jungling. Greta, tinfoil and cardboard sword fights, secret games in the Dust Square Park. Georg, furtive playtime, dirt-stained knees. Greta, brooding brother's handoff, I stayed mine there, betrayed a deductive vow. Georg, what vow? Greta, reaching for my dad. Greta, as Gregoire, green or gray or blue. Not sure if this works here. Trapped libretto. They pulled up, stalled. She walked past the foreign one, bared her legs. Smooth young skin on the back of his neck, no new symbol. Polish double parking, sick and weak syntax, grieved, aggrieved semantics. Where is bold Isolde? Extremist shapewear, Twilight's undergarments. Showing, not saying, and don't chain smoke them. How Reinhardt's music is much better than his libretto, and Furtick had to dump him in the end, too, after so much hero worship, as Greta will have to dump all of them, not her heroes, her hangers-on with their hang-ups. Oh, bondage up yours. Can I abort this version? Sweet new theory of meaning. Meaning depends on contact. Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. theory. Meaning depends on conflicts. Sweet news still. The silence, how it wasn't moving. Not dark gray-blue notebook. Metallic fullness. God as the world has arms from shoulders, hot or cold, but that God is philosophical. My brother's fascination with the religious ones is my fascination. I said God was the collection of outlooks, not of things, the infinite view made of individual views. Benek Esteban said intellect, his secret idealism, my overt solipsism. It isn't ontological of being, it is experiential, of encountering. Your world, I accept its existence, but I don't live in it. If our worlds intersect, we're in an intersection set, but I am only in it as it is mine. The problem of other minds is the wrong specialization, epistemic, it's the expulsion. Get back to the philosophy of the tree of life. God is simply the force of living. There is no papa, but there is beauty, and there is love. They go out with suffering, they all make out. Greta said, there's only this moment, it's truth and I, but it is infused with memory, fantasy, longing, intending. It's not simple, it is complex. Or how the voice of Ludwig, of Georg, of my father, or all the moments exist at once, but their character and truth depend on one moment, the present, which keeps changing, becoming another, because it's your locus, which includes, transmutes them all, the paradox of temporality. The desire for certainty is misguided. What's needed is a taste for risk, how you throw yourself into everything with no guarantee, boldness, even of conviction, but in the antlitz of vulnerability. The truth is always provisional, thus tomorrow my theory itself might change. The opposition of truth and fragility is false. The truth is fragility. Fragility is the truth, my fragile brother. No norms which could be crutches, my poor outsider brother Ludwig wishing to join in versus my brother Georg choosing to opt out. Every morning the possibility of the abyss of the elevator shaft outside the door, or how my room became a grim forest, or how the pond a danger. But God, how can I love God when I don't believe in God? How can I serve God when he doesn't exist anymore? But I still feel him. But I love, serve, feel my brother, my father, how it spills outward in its necessity that has no logic. Distraction, month of silence, memorial. This was the day he came knocking on her chest or brow or pupils. The man's mouth iron smooth her brow, the girl's long hair rained onto his ribs. Therefore today I do not die or live here. Undo, glue gun, function. Shatterproof, gray notebook manqué. It's been too long to remember how to tongue kiss. She would like to sleep, now for a fairy tale. Wide face, small blue eyes, pouty mouth, rapacious nostrils, sibling doubles. Georg will be played by Peter Sarsgaard, Greta by Kate Winslet. No, by Kristen Stewart with dyed dirty blonde hair, Twilight reboot. Dirty blondes have more pain. Also, she looks slightly like me. But isn't Peter too old for her? Ryan Gosling or Dane DeHaan then, either way, girl gets the stronger chin. Forget that all these actors are prettier than the real Trockles, but that last exclamation point was false. It's to fill the mouth in the brow in the mouth. You could swallow one at a time, every moment, re-choose it, because of horror. Georg's friends heralded his weird poems while her dissonances did not get heard. Poor grammar, to swallow this draft is to commit suicide? Stillness hovered over the book as a good two patterns clashed, created sexual tension. Brother and sister in a tent in the backyard, or playing handball in front of the building. Tawdry garden, the Japanese garden, needed weeding. So the mama taught a beauty, momentary warmth. No pain in the shine. Eyeliner on a Japanese girl. Something drugged things. Warping of the LP on the turntable, truth needle and the beauty of sleeping for a longer time as through puberty. Many people bring their pawns here. Only Greta's is the immature idea of Narcissus metaphysics, instrumental solipsism. The world is my performance, my interpretation, ergo something is the score. Knowing the score versus scoring versus being scored, and scoring versus scoring versus scoring. Take it to the limit, like she slow danced to the Eagles, or Brad, with the camp counselor Lee, dark gold long hair, gentle voice, jutting hip bones. You are very mature for your age. Then did nothing. A field of shattered, dying soldiers is completely different. Still, she wanted to die because it wanted to. The suffering persisting, no consolation of expression of the age, its character, no such grandiosity. But sight reading or scoring the whole world for yourself is truly selfish. This informal proof has no line numbers or inference rules, yet these notes reverberate, which was to be devastated. Metaphysical simple. Wrote a prose poem, feel a little better now, don't feel like dying. But why? But why is there no music? Did my brother swallow it all? Dreams undone, Nighttong, Traumen, Umnachtung, impure homotrans of part 1. On evening ward, zoom in on Greta's, her fading father, in darkling room, stammer, fears her stoner armpits, eyelids of mother, and off dank boy knobs, lost wasted, the fucked flesh of anarchic, one tender, dare tart girl sex. Man-child malaise airing into erratic he, her sick sign of cunthood, kidhood, air-filled fun foam with of crank height, sickness, shrieks and sinister darkness, silenced game in stony garden, odor that he drew rats, tits, fit her into twilight, damning the hope off. Entered us, lust blue mirror, treat tracked the slimmer figure, Gestalt Gretel tore sister sibling, and he plunged, staggered as dead into dark ill. Nights broke his mouth like a red, rotten fruit, and the stars glazed, glinted over his speechless, truer horror grief. His dreams felt up, fulfilled the altered house of father. At evening, he went gamely over the fear-fallen, abandoned, freed of graveyard, or he saw losers, corpses in the demanding dead room, taut in chamber, the green flecks of decomposing, their wasting of air, hair, and beautiful shining hands. At the fortress cloister, her brother begged for a hunk stick of bro bread. The shadow of a black horse gripping rape scene sprang from the ink dark and shocked him. When he lagged in his cool bed, unspeakable tears overcame him. But it was no one who had put a hand upon his forehead. When fall, despair, her hips came. He went, kinky goner, gangly ganged her, a hell-seer clairvoyant, in brown-eyed awe, untitled. I feel scared. My dream, his derangement, his dream, my derangement, mine, his part 2 of his poem, part N of my notebook is our and our private, privat und unsere und Liebte. If meaning and truth, not the same, but love, can't live without each, verbrannte Unzucht, diamond Zimmern, other, incest semantics, also sentence and world, girl expression, blaue, erstarren Tür, die nächtige Gestalt, brother world, then girl world, brother expression, both as truth, it's zu Schatten des Bösen, trinity, reality, veracity, fidelity, a sibling or the papa, paper, rib, ihr Nächte und Sterne, ululation, unguent, instrumental, lubricates thinking. They say not, am Abend, Krüppelberger, eisigem Gipfel, Glanz der Abendröte. Ontological, neither true nor false, but that's wrong. My tool is real. Schwer schwanken die Stürmischen, und der Rote trat aus dem Wald. To produce new predictions, predilections, predications, techniques, is to make a Nacht zerbrach Kristallen, die Finsternis schlug deine Sterne, poem, with sets and possible worlds, but not because useful or avoids, kahlen, wirkte eisigen Händen, eine wilde. Contradictions like sound wave versus white powder, rather because, klagend, weiße Gestalt deines Engels, wuchs im Dunkel der Schatten. Significant, hurts, doesn't help you live, have control, but it is Stein, woraufhin heulen floh, seufzend Baums, sanfte Antlitz, true. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to introduce Basil King. Born in England before World War II, Basil King sailed back with his mother during the war and has written about being bombed and surviving on a lifeboat. Later, as a teenager in Detroit, interested in art, he heard someone mention Black Mountain College and headed there himself. He studied with many of the luminaries at the college, including Charles Olson, about whom he has also written. King has been painting for the last 6 decades. He began to write in the 1980s and is now actively practicing both arts. His books include Identity, Warp Spasm, Mirage, 77 Beasts, Basil King's Bestiary, Learning to Draw, A History, and most recently, the spoken word, The Painted Hand, from 2014. In 2010, he exhibited his visual art at Poets House in New York. He's also the subject and narrator of a 2012 film, Basil King, Mirage, by the artists Nicole Perifit and Miles Joris Perifit, and it's available. I don't know if it's already available online somehow, is it?
Not yet.
Not yet, but soon it will be. I think its actual debut is going to be at AWP in coming up. in Minneapolis. And it's a great film. It's very beautiful and gives a good insight into Basil, and the cover is beautiful as well. In November of 2014, Basil King narrated Black Mountain Songs, including a few of his own poems, as part of the BAM Next Wave Festival. Robert Rauschenberg famously stated that he worked in the gap between art and life. Basil King, another Black Mountain College attendee, works constantly in life and constantly in art, especially the life of art, the history of art he has seen or which resides in recent memory. He's a spokesman and also an observer, a participant and a commentator, and significantly, he is a painter and a writer. King's writing lightly surfs above the surface of genre, neither poetry nor prose, or both. He is somehow able to slip poetry into his prose remembrances, which are more than remembrances. They are aesthetics, philosophy, social history. And the poetry seems well at ease, shoulder to shoulder with the prose. From the abstract to the figure, he writes, from the figure to the abstract. It is one thing to survive, it is another to prevail. King learned abstract at Black Mountain, lived abstract in New York City, then slowly became attracted in his art to the figure. So he must see them going back and forth, not in a straight line. He survived, that is, lived, and watched at close quarters some who would prevail. King himself is prevailing now, if to prevail means to have one's work recognized for continued and growing relevance to ever younger generations. But not if it means to be victorious, to prove more powerful than the opposing forces. The victor is not pride, and the victor is not, wrote Kerouac, and King knows the truth of those words. When I first met Basil King and Martha King on the occasion of an exhibition on Black Mountain College in Madrid, the empathy was instantaneous. We had a few beers in a pub called La Granja, and we were immediately back downtown. I've argued elsewhere that Basil King is a feminist, a humanist, an empathist, and for that, a unique artist in our midst. Please join me in welcoming Basil King to DIA.
Wow, that's a lot of shit to live up to. Wow. All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Pam. I'm going to read something that is not from the book, but is very current for me. Right? The ending is current. I sent Ivan Karp a copy of 77 Beasts with a letter asking if he remembered being in my studio on Delancey Street in the early 1960s. Ivan said I was a Jewish mystic. The last thing I wanted to hear was that I was a mystic. I was very rude to Ivan and I threw him out of the studio. He was right. I am a mystic, and I paid for denying that power that insight gives me. I got a letter from Ivan saying how much he liked the poems, and if I had time, I should drop by the gallery. Ivan's gallery, OK Harris, and his cigar store are connected. Ivan was sitting on a high stool in the cigar store, and he introduced me to his assistant, who gave me his chair. Ivan loved cigars and smoked them all the time. He also liked the window that gave him a view of the street. He made a running commentary, a story about the people he saw every day, the tourists that came in from the suburbs and from foreign countries. We talked about artists we had known, those that had disappeared and those that had become international stars. He asked me if I had become a rich man, and I said, this is one thing I hadn't done. You knew everyone, he said, you knew everyone. You didn't exchange painting with any of them? I didn't think about it at that time. I had other things to think about. During the time I spent talking with him, men came in, some of them with their wives, genuflected in front of him. Ivan didn't blush, but I could see his neck and his back, and I could tell he wished I wasn't seeing him. I got up to go, and his assistant asked me if I would like to see the gallery. Before I could answer, Ivan got off the stool. He was red-faced, his voice was shrill. "No, this is a serious man." The assistant was stunned. "You have your answer," I told him. We composed ourselves, shook hands, and Ivan said as I was leaving, if ever I was passing by, I should come in and say hello. Unfortunately, he died in the meantime. But the reason I've read this is because Amiel isn't here tonight. He couldn't make it. But I have finally exchanged something for the first time in my life. One of his father's etchings, Albert's etchings, I exchanged with one of my drawings, and I'm very pleased with it. Now I'm going to read from the spoken word, the painted hand, etc. Looking for the Green Man. Victor and Albert Museum, England. A show of Constable's drawings and watercolors was cordoned off with a yellow ribbon. The lights were off. You could barely see. Martha and I peered into the dim-lit room, straining to see Constable's trees. A guard came up to us and asked if we would like to see the show. Yes, we would. She was the perfect mom, carrying her age and her position with authority. She wore sensible shoes, a tie, a guard's uniform, her pocketbook on her right arm. She lifted the yellow ribbon for us to duck under and turned on the lights. She didn't stand on top of us, but she let us know that we had acquired the drawings. These were given to us by Constable's daughter, etc., etc. Her interests were proprietary. The longer we stayed, the more her identification with the museum increased. Other people wanted to come in, and she would tell them the show is closed. When we were ready to leave, we thanked her. She turned off the lights, and we went in separate directions. From the abstract to the figure, from the figure to the abstract. If it is one thing to survive, it is another to prevail. 5 a.m., the alarm clock rang. The car service phoned. I asked them to. Got dressed, and again the phone rang. It was my daughter Hetty telling me to get up. The car service came at exactly 5:45 a.m. and drove me to the train station. One blueberry muffin, a cup of coffee, and minutes later at 7:05 I boarded the Carolinian, the destination in Greensboro, North Carolina. I told the conductor Greensboro, North Carolina. Last 2 cars, he said. Got a window seat and settled in. A man sat down next to me. I could tell by the way he handled his body. He was European. Right across the aisle, a man in his 30s, dressed in expensive clothes, worked his laptop. His bags are on the seat next to him. When the aisle is empty and no one is looking for a seat, he sips his coffee, checks his blueberry, and looks at himself in the window. With his left hand, he caresses his hair. As soon as someone walks down the aisle looking for a seat, he peers into his laptop. If he can help it, no one is going to sit next to him. It's un-American to ask for help. It's un-American to need help. Pause. In Daumier's painting, A Third-Class Carriage, men, women, and children sit on hard benches. Some passengers look out the windows. Others contemplate. A mother breastfeeds her child. An old woman remembers life is not easy. Her hands hold the handle of a basket. Is she praying? She looks like she has been obedient all of her life. If she is a mother, a grandmother, is she a grandmother, a widow? Is the woman next to her who is breastfeeding the baby the old woman's daughter? The boy is asleep. He isn't leaning on the old woman. He looks as if he is traveling alone. But he could be the old lady's grandson. Are the 3 of them traveling together? Does the basket on the old lady's lap contain lunch and supper? Lo, the line comes from outside. Domia makes robust gestures. You have to go to the first-class carriage where soft cushions enable the patrons to relax. Maybe it's all theater. Maybe the man with the walking stick in the first-class carriage is the same old man sitting with his back to the old lady in a third-class carriage. Domia asks before he tells. Pause. The train was approaching Newark, New Jersey, and the conductor was collecting tickets. He told me that I was in the wrong car, and I would have to move up 2 cars. Towards 2 cars, I was told to go to the next car. Everyone in the seats that were not marked with some restriction had their feet up on the seats and was asleep. I told the conductor, and he took me to a seat marked couples. Took the couples card off of the slot and said, "You can sit here." A few minutes later, a woman who must have been the chief conductor came along and said, "I hear you've had a little trouble." I told her what had happened, and she said the new guys at Penn Station hadn't got the drill straight. At each station, the conductors gave everyone who got on directions where to sit. I was sitting by myself, and no one was told to sit next to me. A lot of people got on in Washington, D.C. An African-American woman was looking for a seat, and I said to her, "You alone?" "Yes. You're welcome to sit here before someone takes the seat." Leave home, meet strangers, and learn to draw. 15 minutes after leaving Washington, the woman sitting next to me asked me, "Do you go to church?" "No, I'm a Jew and I don't go to synagogue." 10 minutes later, she asked me, "What do I eat?" Minutes later, she asked me, "What did I do?" After that, she asked me if I was married. She asked me if I had children, grandchildren. After that, she asked me if I owned a house, where. She asked me, did I shop at Walmart? Do you and your wife take vacations together? Did you and your wife go to the movies together? To all my answers, she replied, "Praise the Lord." When she opened her newspaper and saw a picture of George Bush, she pointed at him and called him Satan. And then she said, "Praise God," that she had sat down next to me. Satan doesn't care about black people. She said Ronald Reagan cared. Praise God. She had been a corrections officer for the state of Maryland in a women's facility. After 15 years and much stress, she developed Crohn's disease. Retired by the state with full benefits, she had just gotten out of the hospital for the 3rd time and was going to visit her daughter and her 5-month-old grandson in Charlotte. Her daughter was married, but she wasn't. Her parents were alive, and her father was 70, and her mother was 68. I didn't tell her I was going to be 73 the next day. When she asked me, I told her I was taking the train because I wanted to look out the window, read and sleep. No, I didn't have a car, didn't need it. She said the only thing to eat in the club car was pizza. She said she didn't have very many friends. It was hard trusting people. She said I could push the seat back. I said I'd like sitting up. She said she bought her handbag for $16. It was an $80 bag, and named a chain that I'd never heard of where she shopped all the time. The car's air conditioning was turned off. She put on a pair of gloves and giggled. I went to the club car, ordered pizza and a Corona beer. From the abstract to the figure, from the figure to the abstract, it is one thing to survive, it is another to prevail. Pause. Delacroix never finished the double portrait of his friend George Sand and Frédéric Chopin. After Delacroix's death, the picture was cut into 2 separate portraits. The only evidence of what the original painting looked like is a pencil sketch showing Chopin playing the piano with Madame Sand sitting beside him. She wears a black dress. Her black hair falls onto her bare shoulders. This Madame Sand bears no resemblance to the notorious George Sand. George dresses in men's clothing, puffs on cigars, and blows smoke rings into the air. This very brave woman threw a gauntlet down in front of the gentility and was willing to take the consequences of being a mother, a lover, a writer, and a breadwinner. So was George Sand. Get rich, be rich, get rich, be rich. A father sits at his kitchen table eating his lunch and drinking a beer. The house was his grandfather's. The Victorians were proud of their accomplishments. The ornate doors, brass doorknobs, lace curtains. The man of the house wore wing collars, a gold watch and chain. His wife wore pearls. The father hates the noise the train makes when it passes on the tracks. One of his sons is with him, and the one who was born with green hair. The boy is 8 years old. His mother and father have wondered if his hair will change its color when he reaches puberty. And if it doesn't, what then? Pause. The father fainted when they put the nails into his flesh. He bled and asked for water. He said, "There is no written word or record of what I have said. My attempt to remake myself has angered the egos of the authorities." His wife stood among people who had known him. She knew he was not the Son of God. Her husband's father was a carpenter, and he had taught his son to dovetail the law so that the law might be used to benefit those who would bring about change. Leave home, meet strangers, and learn to draw. Julian is going to pick me up in Greensboro. I'm going to stay with Laura and Julian Semillian in Winston-Salem. Martha is at a conference in Denver. She is going to join us on Saturday. The day after I arrived in Winston-Salem, Tom Patterson, a good friend of Jonathan Williams, drove me to the Church and Center in Boone, North Carolina, to see a show Tom had curated, works from the collection of Jonathan Williams. Jonathan had died before the show opened. I had met Jonathan at Black Mountain and knew him in San Francisco and New York. From the time Jonathan was a student in Chicago, he collected. The 238 pieces from his collection celebrate Jonathan's erudition. Jonathan walked the Appalachian Trail, listened to music, wrote poetry, published books, took photographs. To sell books, he drove America. To collect outside art, he drove America. He loved Charles Olson, his Kingfisher, his Ode, his Maximus to the citizens of Gloucester. Jonathan announced, "I love Tom Myers, food and booze." I don't know when Jonathan found the other side of the mountain. I do not know if Jonathan identified with outsider artists, but their work grabbed him. Some outsider artists reach deep into the human condition and express commitment and ask, what do I look like? Who am I? What do I desire? Some of them are naive, consumed by neurotic passions that they cannot control. Some of them are crazy. Some produce by rote, but none of them have had formal training. Tall, always dressed and manicured, Jonathan had the authority of a squire, a man who was used to being listened to. A Southerner who enjoyed his comforts. He liked baseball and intelligent humor. Jonathan was the publisher of jargon books. Jonathan drove his dilapidated station wagon across America to place jargon books in bookstores. And as he drove, he would be Johnny Appleseed, and his station wagon would be his warehouse, dispersing new poetry, photography, and prose. Jonathan drove from east to west. The radio was turned on, and there was a jukebox playing. He stopped the car, bought an apple, and took a photograph of the fruit stand. It was an emotional day. Leave home, meet strangers, and learn to draw. For George Stanley, there is hunger. There is always hunger. A mouth, a page, a canvas, a colored eye, a thirsty tongue. Bring him in. Bring in the forgotten, the twin, the initiated, the blue sky, green initiator. Bring him in, bring him in. The car, the automobile with sidewalls, the house between continents, a perplexed roof. Bring him in, bring him in. There is hunger. There is always hunger. A mouth, a page, a canvas, a colored eye, a thirsty tongue. The country is in trouble. No one will come forward. No one will initiate the new year. Bring him in, the forgotten, the twin, the initiator, the sky blue, green initiator. From the abstract to the figure, from the abstract to the figure, it is one thing to survive, it is another to prevail. Sometime in the early 1960s, Martha and I spent a few weeks at Silo in the Black Mountains of North Carolina with Martha's parents. We borrowed her parents' car and drove over the mountains to Black Mountain College. By that time, it had become a boys' summer camp. The lake was clean, the grass was cut, the studies building front door wasn't locked. 6 years after the school had closed, the names of the last students to attend Black Mountain were still on their doors. I removed their names, I opened every door. The activity that had taken place in the studies building had over the years dissolved into the woodwork, and now it is history. Pause. If it fails, begin again. An elderly African-American woman eats chicken with her fingers, talks to her son on her cell phone. 5,000 people in Arlington, Virginia are without electricity. The trees are down and roads are clogged. The grandson graduates from high school tomorrow. With all the discoveries in science, the changes in art and literature, the reforms in working conditions and education, in the 19th century, Turner internalized a conscious reminder that we don't see what we don't want to see. Pause. The green man put on a green suit, a green shirt with a green tie, and polished his green shoes. He had heard of the boy with green hair, and he wanted to meet him. He's heard the boy's family did not know what to do with their son. He's heard that they wanted to cut his hair, his green hair, hoping it would never grow back. He has heard the father's despair. The father woke up. He was holding the green man in his arms. He was telling the green man, I know we do not have the same father, but we are brothers. And dear brother, like my son, you have become part of me. You told Grunwald and Soutine not to be afraid of distortion. Sit in this chair, cross your legs, perpetuate your foliage. Green is an ancient color. The green man takes off his green hat and his green hair falls onto his green shoulders. He smiles, and I ask myself, do we have our green man, a space that isn't me? Thank you. Thank you.